What if your emotions are like a wild horse, and you've been letting them take the reins of your life? Imagine feeling overwhelmed by anger, fear, or desire, only to realize that you have the power to guide those emotions instead of being led by them. Pause for a moment and picture this. A monk sits quietly in a forest clearing, watching a horse gallop wildly through the trees. The horse is strong, untamed, and unpredictable, much like our own emotions. At first, the monk felt powerless against his own inner chaos. His anger would flare without warning, his fears would paralyze him, and his desires would pull him in every direction. But over time, he discovered something profound. Just as a wild horse can be tamed, so too can our emotions be guided. Today, we're diving into his journey, not because it's extraordinary, but because it's profoundly relatable. These aren't abstract concepts or mystical ideas. They're simple truths that can transform the way you navigate your emotions and impulses. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with practical tools to help you become the rider of your own emotional horse, rather than being dragged along for the ride. Before we begin, though, I'd love for you to join our growing community of mindful seekers. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories like this one, where ancient wisdom meets modern living. And if you're ready to take the first step toward mastering your emotions, give this video a thumbs up. It lets me know you're here for more content like this. Now, let's begin at the moment this monk discovered that his emotions were not adversaries to fight, but guides meant to teach him. The monk's journey began with a simple yet powerful realization. Our emotions are like wild horses. Left unchecked, they can carry us far from where we want to go. One day, while meditating in the forest, he observed a horse galloping freely, its mane flowing in the wind. It was beautiful, but also chaotic. The horse didn't follow a path. It ran wherever its instincts took it. This image struck a chord with the monk. He realized that his own emotions were much like that horse. When anger surged, he reacted impulsively, saying things he later regretted. When fear gripped him, he froze, unable to move forward. And when desire pulled at him, he chased fleeting pleasures that left him feeling empty. He had been letting his emotions dictate his actions, rather than guiding them. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of fighting his emotions, he could learn to understand them? The monk began to see his emotions not as enemies, but as messengers. Anger wasn't just rage. It was a signal that something mattered deeply to him. Fear wasn't just weakness. It was a reminder to proceed with caution. Desire wasn't just temptation. It was a call to explore what truly fulfilled him. This shift in perspective changed everything. Instead of trying to suppress his emotions, he started observing them. He noticed how they arose, how they felt in his body, and how they influenced his thoughts. Slowly, he began to see patterns, triggers that set off his emotional reactions and moments when he could choose a different path. But understanding emotions was only the first step. How do we move from observation to action? How do we become the rider of our own emotional horse? That brings us to the heart of the monk's teachings, a guide to taming the wild horse within. The monk's breakthrough came when he stopped trying to suppress his emotions and started learning how to guide them. He realized that fighting against his feelings only made them stronger, like a wild horse resisting a rider who pulls too hard on the reins. Instead, he needed to approach his emotions with patience, understanding, and skill. One day, during a particularly intense moment of anger, the monk paused. Instead of lashing out, he closed his eyes and asked himself, "What is this emotion trying to tell me?" He noticed the heat rising in his chest, the tension in his fists, the rush of energy through his body. Rather than pushing the feeling away, he sat with it. He imagined it as a storm passing through the sky, powerful, but temporary. Slowly, the intensity faded, leaving behind clarity. He realized his anger was rooted in a sense of injustice, a desire for fairness. It wasn't the enemy, it was a messenger. This practice became a cornerstone of his emotional journey. Whenever an emotion arose, whether it was fear, sadness, or even joy, he would pause and observe it without judgment. He called this the art of presence. By simply noticing his emotions, he created space between the feeling and his reaction. That space gave him the freedom to choose how to respond, rather than being swept away by impulse. The monk also discovered the power of breath. When emotions felt overwhelming, he would focus on his breathing, inhaling deeply through his nose and exhaling slowly through his mouth. This simple act calmed his nervous system and allowed him to regain control, like gently pulling the reins to steady a spooked horse. Over time, he found that even the wildest emotions could be soothed with this practice. But the monk didn't stop there. He began to explore the roots of his emotions. Why did certain situations trigger anger, while others brought peace? He realized that many of his reactions were tied to past experiences, unmet needs, or fears about the future. By understanding these patterns, he could address the deeper causes of his emotional storms, rather than just managing their surface effects. For example, one evening, a fellow monk criticized his work during a shared task. The monk felt a surge of defensiveness, ready to argue back. But instead of reacting, he paused and reflected. He realized the criticism touched on a fear of inadequacy, a fear he had carried since childhood. Acknowledging this allowed him to respond calmly, saying, "Thank you for sharing your perspective. I'll consider it carefully." That moment of self-awareness transformed what could have been a conflict into an opportunity for growth. Through these practices, the monk learned that mastering emotions isn't about eliminating them. It's about understanding and channeling them wisely. Emotions are neither good nor bad. They're signals that point us toward what truly matters. The key is to listen without letting them take over. But how do we apply these lessons in our own lives? How can we become the riders of our emotional horses, rather than being dragged along by them? That brings us to the next chapter, a practical guide to taming the wild horse within. The monk didn't just reflect on his emotions. He developed practical tools to manage them. These tools were simple, yet powerful, and they can help you take control of your own emotional horse. Let's explore 3 key practices that anyone can start using today. Step 1. Observe without judgment. The first step is to observe your emotions without labeling them as good or bad. When anger, fear, or sadness arises, resist the urge to push it away or act on it immediately. Instead, pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Where do I feel it in my body? For example, if you're angry, you might notice tension in your jaw or heat in your chest. Simply acknowledging these sensations creates distance between you and the emotion, giving you space to choose how to respond. The monk often used the metaphor of clouds in the sky. Emotions are like clouds, they come and go. You don't need to hold on to them or chase them away. Just watch them drift by. This practice helps you see emotions as temporary visitors rather than permanent parts of who you are. Step 2. Breathe through the storm. When emotions feel overwhelming, the monk relied on his breath to steady himself. He would inhale deeply for 4 seconds, hold for 4, and exhale slowly for 6. This technique, known as box breathing, calms the nervous system and restores clarity. Try it now. Inhale, hold, exhale. Feel the tension begin to melt away with each breath. Breathing isn't just a physical act. It's a way to anchor yourself in the present moment. When you focus on your breath, you create a safe harbor amidst the storm of emotions. Over time, this practice becomes second nature, helping you stay grounded even in challenging situations. Step 3. Replace reaction with action. Once you've observed your emotions and calmed your mind, the next step is to replace impulsive reactions with intentional actions. For instance, if you're tempted to lash out in anger, consider writing down your thoughts instead. Journaling allows you to process your feelings without causing harm to yourself or others. Alternatively, you might take a walk, listen to calming music, or engage in a creative activity. These small acts shift your energy from chaos to clarity. The monk also emphasized the importance of asking, what does this emotion need? Sometimes anger needs acknowledgement. Fear needs reassurance. Sadness needs comfort. By addressing the underlying need, you can transform destructive impulses into constructive choices. These tools may seem simple, but their impact is profound. They empower you to take charge of your emotions, rather than being controlled by them. And yet, mastering these practices takes time and patience. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. But how do these tools translate into real-life situations? How can they help you live with greater intention and freedom? That brings us to the final chapter, a reflection on what it means to truly be the rider of your emotional horse. When the monk finally learned to guide his emotions, something remarkable happened. He felt free. It wasn't the kind of freedom that comes from avoiding challenges or escaping pain. It was the freedom that arises when you stop being controlled by your impulses and start living with intention. Imagine this. You're no longer at the mercy of every passing emotion. When anger flares, you don't lash out. You pause and reflect. When fear whispers doubts in your ear, you don't let it paralyze you. You acknowledge it and move forward anyway. And when desire pulls you toward distractions, you don't follow blindly. You ask whether it aligns with your values. This is what it means to be the rider of your emotional horse. The monk often shared a story about a young traveler who came to the monastery seeking peace. The traveler was overwhelmed by life, constantly reacting to stress, running from discomfort, and chasing fleeting pleasures. He felt like a leaf caught in a storm, tossed in every direction. The monk listened patiently and then said, "You cannot stop the storm, but you can learn to steady yourself." He taught the traveler the same practices we've explored: observing emotions, breathing through chaos, and choosing intentional actions. Over time, the traveler transformed. He still faced challenges, but he no longer felt powerless. This is the true gift of mastering your emotions, the ability to face life's storms with calmness and clarity. It doesn't mean you'll never feel anger, fear, or sadness again. Those emotions are part of being human. But instead of letting them dictate your path, you can use them as guides, signals that point you toward growth, healing, and connection. Living with intention also means aligning your actions with your deepest values. Ask yourself, what truly matters to me? How do I want to show up in the world? When you know the answers to these questions, it becomes easier to steer your emotional horse in the right direction. For example, if kindness is one of your values, you might choose compassion over criticism when someone frustrates you. If courage is important to you, you might step into uncertainty instead of retreating into comfort. But remember, this journey isn't about perfection. There will be days when your emotions feel wild and untamed, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep practicing, keep learning, and keep striving to be the rider of your own life. And now, as we come to the end of this story, let's reflect on how these lessons can inspire you to take the reins of your emotions and create a life filled with purpose and peace. As we wrap up this journey, take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered together. The monk's story teaches us that emotions are like wild horses, powerful, but not uncontrollable. When we pause, observe, and breathe, we gain the power to guide them instead of being swept away. The tools we explored, observing without judgment, breathing through chaos, and choosing intentional actions, are simple yet transformative. They remind us that emotional freedom isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about facing them with clarity and purpose. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by your emotions? Or maybe you've tried one of these practices and noticed a shift. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one, and your reflections could inspire others too. If this story resonated with you, consider joining our community of mindful seekers. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories like this one, where ancient wisdom meets modern life. And if you found value here, give this video a thumbs up to help others discover it too. Before you go, remember this: you are the rider of your emotional horse. Every day, you have the power to guide your emotions and align your actions with your values. Start small. Pause before reacting. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what does this moment need? Over time, these choices will lead to profound changes in your relationships, your work, and your sense of self. Thank you for being here and taking this step toward living with intention. Until next time, stay mindful and keep riding with purpose.